You don't have to wait too much longer, trainers. Our battlers are getting into it. This is Swiss round 12 between Emir and Domenico. The Alola Ninetales is fresh out of the gate, paired up with that Landorus, and the opponents are that trusty Incineroar with the Cresselia.
Cresselia and Incineroar is really a match made in heaven here, being able to go for a fake out, go for a trick room, and reverse the speed orders of this Ninetales and the Landorus. Now, if you go for the fake out here for Domenico's side into the Landorus to stop it doing any damage, you are allowing the Ninetales to get an Aurora Veil up. There's not really too many ways that Domenico has to be able to stop Aurora Veil coming out. And it could be really important, especially since it's carrying the light clay, as to how long that defensive boost is going to be lasting.
That can leave it a little bit vulnerable as well. We've often seen it running something like a Focus Sash to be able to take an additional hit and enable that Aurora Veil, but it has the potential to go down in one. Fake out, however, goes down into the Hisuian Arcanine. The Ninetales is able to get that Aurora Veil up safely, so the defense and special defenses are now up on Emir's side for 8 turns, thanks to that light clay. But also things that last for many, many turns are Trick Room. That has now been set up by the Cresselia.
And it's going to be difficult now for Domenico to find a lot of damage onto the field. Not just have you got the Aurora Veil boosting up the damage, you've got the Intimidate that's come in from Arcanine, reducing the attack of that Incineroar, but also Ninetales getting a defense boost from the snow. So I think Domenico really has to find a way to reposition here and maybe bring the Registeel in, start to get up some defensive capabilities, defense boost, maybe get a skill swap onto it to stop it taking any damage from that Landorus. But in the meantime, Emir has positioned a Choice Band Arcanine in a position where it can really go on the offensive right now.
Cresselia's done its job. It's getting out of here, maybe giving way to a more offensive Pokemon in the back. Or, hey, another setup choice in the form of that Registeel, a Pokemon that isn't going to worry about the Alola Ninetales either, as it can't really do super effective damage to it. The Articuno, however,
it's here.
It's here on the field, going to be able to reap all the benefits of this snow as the Incineroar goes for the parting shot, just allowing Domenico the opportunity to bring it back in later, go for another fake out, and keep those Intimidates rolling through.
Probably bringing back in the Cresselia in this situation. If the Arcanine is going for a Rock Slide, that's going to do minimal damage after the parting shot to both of the Registeel and the Cresselia that is indeed coming back onto the field. Rock Slide there, launched out from the Arcanine, but you can see how defensively trained this Cresselia is, as well as how bulky the Registeel is. Now with Articuno on the field, I wouldn't be surprised if we're in that position where a Sheer Force starts to become a really good idea really quickly.
It could be a nice way to just get rid of that Registeel quick and easy. However, Registeel going to be in a good position to apply pressure with those heavy slams and the body presses, something that Articuno definitely doesn't want to take either. If we dive deeper into the Articuno, it is running that Ice Terror as well, so it is going full on the offensive mode. No defensive strategies at play for it.
Not at all. Cresselia now removing itself from the field, getting the Incineroar back in, getting that Intimidate up, removing even more of the damage that that Arcanine is going to be landing out onto the field, and allowing this Registeel the opportunity to go for an Iron Defense.
Yes, this is what Registeel loves to do, get its defenses nice and boosted so it can go for this damage. Oh, the Rock Slide not going to be able to reap any benefits from this. Snows doesn't get the advantage like the Blizzard does on the Articuno, so is only going to be able to connect on one.
The amount of turns that Registeel is on the field, it's very likely that eventually this Articuno is going to be able to connect with it, with the sheer cold. And because it's in the snow, because there's that Aurora Veil, there's no Intimidates on the field right now for Emir, but you can see the effect of the stacking all of the defenses in front of Pokemon that really can't do anything towards it. Sheer Cold actually becomes the highest damage dealing move overall that this Articuno can run over the course of a battle, not just the turn that you click it.
It's a very valid point. It's high risk, high reward, and we've seen it in the past with Guillotine Kartana, for example, with Fidgeting Lou. It is on these teams for a reason. It's not just a, you know, let's roll a dice and see what happens. It's there for a particular point in time in a match where you need that one-hit KO. Body Press does connect through. Articuno able to take that really well thanks to the Aurora Veil as Incineroar goes for the parting shot. A wise targeting here because Sheer Cold doesn't really care about the stats. There's no point wasting those juicy drops onto a Pokemon that isn't going to care about them. Arcanine, however, is now a Ghost type as well. Means it cannot be hit by any of these previously super effective body presses, so now has a little bit more defensive flexibility, enabling this Cresselia to come back in.
Sheer Cold, though, does connect. It's connecting onto the Registeel, and the Registeel is down and out. One hit KO.
There it is. You see it, Pokemon trainers. The knockout from the Sheer Cold. This Articuno means business, and that is a very devastating turn for Domenico. The Cresselia takes that little bit of damage thanks to the Rock Slide, but really it was the Sheer Cold superstar in that turn.
If you want to change the nature of a game, that is the way to do it, ladies and gentlemen. And the reason we saw it back in previous regulation sets, Ting Lu running Fisher, because it was on the board for a long time. You could do it over and over again, and it couldn't get removed very quickly. That's exactly what this Articuno is doing in this spot, and just makes it more and more viable in this particular matchup where Domenico needs to take some time setting up the board state, getting the damage onto the field, and while they're doing that, Sheer Cold is going turn after turn after turn after turn.
Flare Blitz is going to have to try and have something to say about it, and it does get the knockout, so no more Articunos coming through.
Critical hit.
That is how you get revenge for your fallen comrade here. The Flare Blitz getting the critical hit to remove that Articuno from play. That is something that Domenico needed desperately to jump back into this match. The Ice Beam comes through as well, minimal damage into that Arcanine as it is able to retaliate with the Rock Slide. Of course, Incineroar not taking too much damage from it thanks to these previous parting shots and Intimidates.
Lou, we're back to what we could say is a normal game of Pokemon video game here, where the Sheer Cold is gone, the Iron Defense Body Press is gone, and now it's just the Pokemon that we have remaining that need to use all of the tools at their disposal. Now, Cresselia coming in and being around after the Sheer Cold from the Articuno has left the field puts Domenico in a fantastic position because he can go for those Lunar Blessings, stay on the field for a long period of time, and get the health back where Sheer Force, or Sheer Cold, in fact, is not going to remove that defensive capability.
Well, it's sheer excellence on the field at the moment. The Arcanine, however, does avoid the Incineroar once again. A little bit of chip onto this opposing Cresselia as the Incineroar that means business goes to the Flare Blitz into the Arcanine and gets another one-hit KO here. Able to do so much damage. I mean, Incineroar's number one.
Stop it.
It's number one in the usage stat for a reason. It is mean. It is here. It is getting knockouts. And I love to see this comeback from Domenico and the Incineroar.
Wow, this game has taken a turn for the crazy here with two critical hits in a row. Domenico, probably in a little bit of a difficult spot previously, really has just hit the buttons that given him the best chance at success. If you get the critical hits, perfect, you're back into the game. But if you don't try, you don't get them in this situation. And yeah, okay, the critical hits definitely mattered with that Aurora Veil on the field, but oh my lord, the Cresselia taking those attacks like a champ, not folding to the Sludge Bomb, but the Rock Slide is in fact enough to pick up the knockout.
The Rock Slide accuracy has been a little bit tentative in this game so far, but it was able to connect when it needed to there to get the knockout chip onto that opposing Cresselia. Once again, Incineroar doing what it does best, going for these rotations, and they're critically at a good time here because Domenico only has 2 Pokemon remaining. We have yet to see the 4th and final Pokemon. It is that Raging Bolt coming out onto the field, and of course, Incineroar will be able to come back onto the field now, Intimidate one more time, have Fake Up pressure onto this Landorus one more time, and after that, it's just going to be a few more turns to close out this game.
Landorus has now had its special attack dropped, and that's going to put this Assault Vest Raging Bolt in a little bit of a better position to be able to take attacks. But with Aurora Veil still on the field, courtesy of the Light Clay that Ninetales is holding here, the Landorus is possibly not even going to get 2-hit KO'd by the Raging Bolt, and combined with Arcanine's Rock Slide, just putting that extra little bit of chip damage Raging Bolt's way, probably knocking out the Incineroar as well. I'd be surprised if the Raging Bolt could take 2 Earth Powers from this Landorus.
It is going to go for the Protect. I was wondering if the Raging Bolt maybe wants to start going for these Snarls. It's going to deal super effective damage to the Ghost Arcanine as well as reducing the special attack of that Landorus. And while the Aurora Veil's still up, you can't deal too much damage, so you might as well weaken the offensive pressure they have. Incineroar does fall victim to the Rock Slide here. It's now the Raging Bolt on its own legs in order to try and get the victory here. It flinches, so we're not going to be able to see what move it has gone for here, but the Aurora Veil has now faded, so it does leave the Arcanine and the Landorus a little bit more vulnerable.
Now the Landorus gets to do a really cheeky little maneuver here and try to go for the substitutes. Now, if it's able to get to the substitutes and the Arcanine Rock Slide is able to flinch the Raging Bolt as it did in the last turn, then it's in a position where it can get a substitute for free and keep itself safe. Now it's committed its Terra into the Terra Fairy. It's also going to be weak to those Sludge Bombs, but trying to catch the Landorus off guard on an offensive Earth Power instead.
Yes, another flinch comes through, though. This Raging Bolt is having a hard time with these rocks, it's safe to say. The Terra is definitely difficult because, as you've said, the Sludge Bomb can now come through and do super effective damage. Does a significant chunk. That's definitely putting Raging Bolt in a vulnerable spot as Arcanine follows up with that Rock Slide to get the knockout. Emir able to take game 1, but it got dicey for a minute there with those critical hits, for sure.
I think dicey is definitely the word for it there, Lou. That game was back and forward, but seeing how well Emir was able to cope with that, taking 2 critical hits, both of which were knockouts that wouldn't otherwise have happened, and still managing to find a great path through the game into the end game. I mean, that Arcanine, it was intimidated so many times over, but Emir, knowing that Domenico's team was maybe a little bit more defensively orientated, meant that it was quite comfortable to go for the secondary effect of Rock Slide. Sit there on the field, you're doing a little bit of chip damage, and you're crucially stopping Domenico's team from acting every single turn.
That's a great observation, because I wanted to credit the way Emir played kind of passively with that Arcanine. As you said, it's not doing as much offensive pressure thanks to the Intimidates and parting shots, but it was able to just stay on the field, go for those Rock Slides. And I think as a trainer, sometimes you're really tempted to be like, this isn't dealing the damage I want it to. It's kind of null and void. The opponent doesn't even have to worry about it and target into it at that point. So why don't I switch out and bring it back in a little bit fresh and ready? But actually, that would have been very detrimental to his strategy, that constant pressure of the flinches. And we saw it work so beautifully in the end with that Raging Bolt. I think really does demonstrate that kind of caliber of play, staying calm, staying cool with that particular Pokemon and leaving it there. That sometimes the passive plays can be completely the right call.
You don't have to be going on the offensive every single turn, and actually, you know, that's a call out to the substitute play in the end game, where you're just trying to get an opportunity to win without taking a risk, rather than just going, you know, just going for it and being able to try and put as much damage on the board as quickly as possible. Now, going into game 2 for these trainers, do you know what I want to see, Lou? Flutter Mane.
I can see that. I can completely see that. I think for me, if I'm Domenico, I'm thinking, how am I going to stop this Articuno?
That's exactly
because you have literally no way to stop the weather in this situation. The snow is going to go up if that Alolan Ninetales comes into the fray. So maybe you need a Pokemon like the Flutter Mane that's able to deal that extra damage and try and remove it from the field very quickly. It's also a Choice Specs Pokemon. It can deal big damage. If you can have that speed to get the KO, even on something like the Alolan Ninetales, before that Aurora Veil goes up, that can be critical. But it's a double ice thing here. Wrap-up trainers is getting cold in here as the Articuno and the Alolan Ninetales come out front and center for Emir, and in the vanguard for Domenico, it is the Incineroar and the Cresselia.
Choices, trainers here. Do you stop the Sheer Cold, or do you stop the Aurora Veil? Do you stop the thing that's immediately pressuring to get a one-hit knockout on your opponent, or the thing that's going to stop you from knocking out the thing that's going to get a one-hit KO on your opponent?
Questions, and it's going to come right down to the wire in this turn 1. Articuno, of course, with the Choice Specs, has no way to protect, and whatever it picks, it will be locked into. It must be tempting to go for something like a Blizzard, however, considering both these Pokemon aren't going to be taking a lot of damage from it. Sheer Cold might be the question. The speed is on Ninetales' side, though. It gets that Aurora Veil up. The special defense and the defense are in play once again, and this Articuno goes for the Sheer Cold, but misses. Has to warm up a little bit more in this game, too, as Incineroar goes for the parting shot.
But Articuno, with that Snow Cloak, avoiding the attack. Incineroar is going to be locked in this turn. The Trick Room goes up. Not the worst position for Incineroar to be in, to be fair. It's not threatening to be KO'd other than from the Sheer Cold. It can launch Flare Blitz that we saw get those critical hits in game 1. That could be really tempting to try and go for again. And here it is, Domenico launching it out again, but not getting the critical hit this time.
Look how different it is when there is no critical hit in play for that Incineroar. Cresselia able to follow up with the Ice Beam, give Articuno a taste of its own medicine, but only gets a little bit of chip.
Sheer Cold!
It connects!
It's going! And Incineroar is down, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, it is a one-hit KO.
Not every day you see an Articuno taking down an Incineroar, but the king of Pokemon video game has been felled by this sheer cold. Blizzard comes through into the Cresselia with a double target, the additional bit of damage, but still Cresselia so bulky.
I'm trying to be unbiased here, but I was almost hoping that a freeze would be coming out onto
Benjamin,
that Cresselia.
no.
I just like adding insult to injury, I'm afraid. But yeah, the freeze is something that could be a factor here at play as the Registeel comes in. Now Ninetales retreating away from the heavy slam that the Registeel can go onto it. Getting an Intimidate down, not going to affect the Registeel because of its clear body ability, but is going to put a little bit more pressure back onto the field. And without that Intimidate support from the Incineroar, it's going to be able to do lots more damage. Heavy slam and an Ice Beam into the Articuno. It's not landing.
Yeah, no sheer cold today. The Registeel must be quaking in its little boots, however. It's got the Pokemon that felled it in the game 1, and now you have potential Flare Blitzes coming away as well from this Arcanine. So Registeel not in a safe position, but it does have good natural defenses. It can maybe take one of these attacks, as long as it's not the sheer cold, of course.
I really like this change up from game 1 to game 2, where Emir's targeting down the Incineroar rather than the Registeel and removing it from play. And that kind of means that the Articuno doesn't have to shoulder the burden of being able to knock out this Registeel, because the Arcanine with its Flare Blitzes is still going to be doing super effective damage.
I also quite like the Ice Beams coming through from the Cresselia, because Emir might want to switch out that Articuno and preserve it for when Trick Room is over.
Right.
And then potentially that Landorus could come in from the back. If it takes a 4-time super effective move, even in Aurora Veil, it might easily go down. Terrestrialization is happening though. The snow is not enough to glisten on the field. We want to have beautiful and bejeweled Pokemon here as the Arcanine becomes that Terra Ghost.
What a great Terra type to have in this scenario. Making yourself immune to the body presses is going to pay dividends later on. Iron Defense on the Registeel, so not the opportunity that Domenico had to maybe knock out this Articuno this turn. Instead, playing the numbers a little bit more. Sheer Cold doesn't land into the Cresselia, and Arcanine is able to get a powerful Flare Blitz onto Registeel, but with that Iron Defense, it's taking it like an absolute champ.
It does get the burn, however, so Registeel isn't going to appreciate taking that at all. I have to say, though, I like the way Domenico is playing this out. Yes, you have a sheer cold Pokemon against you, but you cannot live in fear of that. You have to start playing your own game, because at the end of the day, the odds are in your favor that sheer cold does not connect. So going for the Terra Fairy, making sure that those fire type moves are not going to be dealing as much damage, getting that Iron Defense set up, knowing that you now are in the driving seat to apply pressure with something like the Body Press is really nice, and that Articuno is being whittled away at.
It is, and now actually the burn, it looks like it's pretty bad, but Cresselia has the ability to remove that burn from play. Heavy Slam not quite picking up the KO on the Articuno because of the burn, though. Gets another opportunity to sheer cold as Lunar Blessing goes on to Cresselia. The health isn't going to matter one little bit here as the sheer cold comes in and does not connect onto Cresselia.
Yeah, the Articuno just unable to get these knockouts now with the sheer cold. However, the Flare Blitz from the Arcanine is going to try and make a two-shot of that into the opposing Cresselia. The snow has gone away as well, though. This isn't too bad for Emir because you do have the Alola Ninetales still in the back, so you can bring it back at a later stage. That is totally fine as the Trick Room ends. So everything looking good for Emir here. Would almost not be surprised to see something like the Arcanine switch out and the Alola Ninetales come back in.
Well, this is the turn that's really critical. The Registeel is on the field and the Landorus isn't. That gives the Registeel a little bit of safety in this spot. And actually, what I was about to say is completely off as the Trick Room has been ended. Now the Arcanine is able to get the Flare Blitz knockout onto the Cresselia, take away Registeel's support.
Exactly, Articuno gets it! The sheer cold comes through. All of Registeel's efforts are null and void due to that one-hit KO.
It's Pokemon going down left, right, and center. This Articuno has almost no PP left of its sheer cold. It doesn't have to hit many times. Once or twice is absolutely fine. Urshifu joining the field, going to do super effective damage to that Arcanine. But there is two more Pokemon in the back for Emir. This Urshifu is only able to target one Pokemon at a time.
I mean, I stand corrected, thinking the Arcanine could switch out, but then why would it when it can get that 2-hit on the Cresselia with the Flare Blitz? Urshifu now actually finally having some speed advantage on Domenico's side outside of Trick Room, is able to get the knockout, but I really do think Articuno has put in the work that it needed to do.
So much.
Arcanine can go for the Flare Blitz here, do a good amount of damage, but that Focus Sash is still in play for the Urshifu.
Urshifu pretty much going down to its Focus Sash or close enough. This Ninetales, though, is coming in. It's going to be able to not take super effective damage from the Wicked Blows, in fact resisting those hits. It has access to Blizzard, it has access to Moonblast. Sucker Punch, the last hurrah for Urshifu on Domenico's side as Arcanine comes down, and this Ninetales is able to respond.
Exactly, there's not a lot Urshifu can do in this position, but it does get the cheeky KO on that opposing Arcanine, a little bit of vengeance for the fallen Cresselia. But what a match, what a way to kick off day 2. It was fantastic. Congratulations, Emir.